Namaste and good evening from Chennai. It is my privilege actually to be in conversation with two wonderful artists who I'm also big fans of, and I've had the opportunity of meeting and interacting with them on so many different levels. Very warm welcome to Indira Kadambi and V Ramprasad. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Easily, I think amongst artists couples, they're definitely among the top, our at least our top favorites. We really love them for all the photographs that they share, their honesty, their there's a certain sense of truth that really comes out in everything that we watch. And even in terms of their artistry, we're big fans. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation to discuss this. Everybody's been asking me, how did we actually decide to categorize leisure as an emotion? Uh, and really, Indraka and Ramprasad, sir, the reason was really to see how creative leisure is really so crucial for artists. I do remember a wonderful conversation that I had with Vishnu, in which we talked about the sounds of silence. And I still can never forget some fantastic insights he shared with me, also about his own sadhana with his guru, his father Shri T V Ramprasad, and also how engaging in silence would really enrich his artistry. So also from the perspective of we want to talk to you a little bit about the idea of importance to pause, importance of silence, importance to have some fun, importance to let go, the importance of process. Thank you again. And I'm going to straight away deep dive and really firstly, Indraka, ask you a little bit about what comes to your mind when you think of the word leisure as an artist.
An artist, leisure is time for yourself, I guess.
Right.
Time. Not just in terms of time, but also in terms of the mind, not just physically, but also mentally. Yeah, that space you'd require. Yeah, just to sit and chill and sit and yeah, that is my kind
Yeah.
of leisure, just to let go and do nothing sometimes. That's also leisure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Sir, can you tell me a little bit about, for me, sometimes when I think of the word leisure, I think also of the word idle. What is your take on the word leisure? And what is your take on the word idle in the context of an artist?
Um, they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So I would equate leisure with silence. So if the mind can be in some way silent, where you are not putting into too much of stress, you're not thinking, because when we work, when we are doing our regular motions of the day, we constantly are physically pushing our boundaries, mental boundaries. So very often we don't pause, we don't try to get the mind to be silent and take the time to just sit back and be with ourselves. So I would say that silence is very important, and I feel that is something which I feel any of my leisure activities, I find that silence away from the thoughts, which is leisure for me. I don't know about idle, yeah, because when you're idle, you may be thinking of various things, but I don't know if that is leisure. So,
Right.
for
No,
me,
absolutely.
yes.
Do you sort of also, when you say silence and the importance of it, I know, and it's so important, do you kind of seek that silence consciously? Or, as in, what I mean is, do you make time for it almost on an everyday basis? Because I do remember Vishnu telling me about how he would consciously make time for it. And I think the time that I interviewed him, he had actually gone through a sadhana of silence. So I want to ask you a little bit about, do you as an artist seek silence on an everyday basis? Also, do you make time for leisure on an everyday basis? Or is it something that happens like naturally?
The first question is yes, I consciously do make efforts to um, still the mind because otherwise, for me, it's not sustainable. Because the mind, if it's constantly uh, doing things with itself, it sometimes becomes very difficult for me to function on a sustained basis throughout the day. So at various points, I consciously withdraw. I try to keep that silence because that silence actually rejuvenates the mind for me to do the next activity. So yes, this is something which I consciously try through either my meditation or through even various when I'm singing or when I'm teaching or doing other activities. I try to definitely at some point withdraw and keep it silent. Um, the second question was whether. Sorry, what is the second
Yeah.
question?
The second question was really about, do you kind of make time for it?
Yes, definitely do. So on a daily basis, I like to go to the kitchen and like to cook something, do something because that is something which really takes my mind away from everything and just allows me to be with myself. Or sometimes when I just drive and I'm just by myself, or sometimes just watch a match by sports by myself, or read a book. So these are some ways I definitely try to pull myself away into these activities which I term as leisure for my own self.
Right, right. So the words I'm taking away are stilling the mind, and also solitude, and also finding a time to do something other than what is your sort of core activity in a certain way. You spoke about cooking. So I'm going to ask Indra a question really about, stilling the mind. Now, can you still the mind while you're dancing? Because I'm always ask dancers this question, that can you find stillness in movement? Like, and therefore, can you find leisure in just dancing as well?
Um, when whenever I dance, I mean, at some point or the other, I mean, there's a moment that you forget yourself, you forget your body pain, you forget what you're doing, and you're so lost in the movements or whatever you're doing, abhinaya, whatever, you're just in that. So I think that is a beautiful moment too. So there is a certain kind of stillness too, and because everything is coming together and it's beautiful. Yeah.
So you're saying
Often
that
I do
you can
find
also,
that.
you can also find stillness in movement.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Do you,
Actually, when body, mind, everything is together, I think I do find it. Yeah.
and do you find that also as a great process of like do you find that also like leisurely, like in a certain way? Like, do you feel a sense of leisure when you dance also?
Yeah, if it is like, I mean, if you're just practicing for yourself with no time bound, with nothing coming later, no classes after my practice, or no rehearsals coming up, nothing, you're just working on yourself, yes, definitely. Yeah, I do find
Right.
that.
Right. So, as artists, I'd like for you both to sort of reflect a little bit about how leisure is in many ways.
Sorry,
Um, can you hear me now?
sorry. Can you
Can
repeat
you
that?
repeat the
The
question,
dogs
please?
were barking. Yes.
I was going to ask you that how, as artists, in many ways, is leisure also in a certain way comes with freedom from a sense of performance, a sense of expectations, and how you can also find leisure in the very idea of the process itself. Could you just talk a little bit about that idea of finding leisure in process?
Yes. I constantly tell my students that when they practice also, for example, they need to be able to they should just forget that even if they're performing and they're practicing for a performance, the practice should be such that it is not a practice, is not a performance. So they need to, if they're going to sing, say an alapanai for say 10 minutes, they should not practice as if they're singing for the performance, sing 10 minutes and leave it. I say that they need to really practice maybe that alapanai for 60 minutes without a time. See, they need to be able to enjoy every moment in that, be able to understand where they're making mistakes, try to repeat it, try to enjoy that entire the phrases, the movements, internalize it. Only then they can actually be able to, I mean, that is more important than being able to just do this as you're performing every day and then go and perform. So the process, I definitely think, is very, very important. And especially the leisurely execution of that. Even while singing, while practicing, I say, if you're singing, just try to stand on every note. Just be there with every note. Look at its face. I would say, just, it's everything, every swara as a devata. Try to be able to go to its doorstep, allow it to, pray to it so that you can actually go inside there. So that leisure, if it is not there, then music, I don't think music actually comes out. Yeah, it becomes a very, very hurried activity, very preconceived activity, more cerebral rather than something which comes from the soul. Yes.
Indraka, how would you liken this idea to the context of dance? Like he spoke about how you find a sense of you watch some dances and there's a sense of leisure in the artistry itself. There's the pace and the movement and the abhinaya. Of course, you're such an expert in that. So how do you find that leisure in the arts, and actually how does that translate into the expression of the idea of leisure in the dance itself?
I think that also depends on the maturity, the age, everything, right? So as you get old, that you find that sort of leisureness in your performance or in your thought process, everything. So usually what happens, many times you're given certain thing to do, like a performance that is coming up and you work towards it. So there's always the body and mind are constantly engaged. There's no leisure sort of, there is no time to, think calmly. So your mind is running all the time. But recently I was working on a production and I had a lot of time, to process every step of it. And I really, really liked this time because it was so unhurried and nothing was forced into, because there was no timeline sort of. So it just, that shape it took a natural path, towards conceiving the idea or working on the process. So I think it's very, very important to have that with no boundary in terms of time or whatever.
So there's also like freedom, right? Yeah. Sir, I'm going to ask you a little bit about, do you think leisure is also like a learning curve? Meaning that, Indraka spoke about maturity. So I'm trying to think that is it in some way a privilege of a senior artist? And by senior, I mean years of experience, actually. Does it come with having engaging with the art, also going through the motions of what it is to be a performer, the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows, and people pleasing to and then finally you kind of reach a point where you feel like I am in a mood for leisure. I want to be in a state of unhurriedness with my arts. Do you feel like it's a learning curve in some sense?
Definitely. It takes time, just like the wine matures, and the more it matures, it tastes better. Somehow, over a period of all the years in which we sort of go through our journeys as artists, I think we find this this silence. It's just a journey. And I think the more you mature as an artist, the more you travel that path over and over again, that comes much more. I mean, you can see it. All the senior artists actually are able to see it very easily. But having said that, I think definitely it is important for us to guide our students and people who are sort of taking guidance from us. Because for us, so as youngsters, when we were learning, there were teachers who definitely, like teachers like S. Rajam or P.S. Narayan Swami sir, they definitely showed us the path of leisure. In the sense, there was nothing, they were not pushing you towards deadlines or anything. They allowed us to enjoy the process. So I think we need to pass it on to this younger generation so that they can at least understand the concept. Yes, it will take some time for them to naturally go there and start feeling, but at least they start becoming aware of that.
No, absolutely. Indraka, I'm sure your guru also instilled that quality in you. Could you share a story, or do you remember something about how she would, how this, without actually saying too much, how did she instill this quality of pace and this pace of this idea of leisure into dance?
I think I can talk about Kalanidhi Mami actually. I think she would always compare it with the life's experience. Certain compositions that I used to do before marriage, and she used to tell me, like, in the composition, kalyana aanapru panna adu vere madri irukum. So I used to think, no, practicing well, but doing pretty well. What does she mean by that? Only after marriage I can do. So it's only when after I got married or I had Vishnu, then I could see that difference, So that timeline, that experience was very, very important, in understanding that particular composition and in executing it. I think life's experience also counts in this. That's what I learned from my mommy. Yeah, it does make a difference.
It's like the blossoming, right? Like we all go through these experiences and we become like,
Yeah, it'll be like an imitation sort of. Otherwise, like, unless you go through certain things yourself and then try to, bring it out.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just want to ask you a little bit about, having, shared the sort of, the house of artists. Literally, your house is really like all four of you are artists. That is just fantastic. I just want to know, like, what are your, leisurely conversations like? Are you always discussing the arts? Like, because I do know that you have many, many interests. I know that you travel, you go hiking, you have dogs at home that you're constantly like hanging out with. So tell us a little bit about all the many things, and cooking. I remember in my previous interview with Ramprasad sir as well, he talked about how he enjoys fixing a drink, cooking and all of that. So a little bit about, other, how you engage with the idea of leisure, your other like hobbies, and your leisurely conversations on the dinner table.
I think before Vishnu got married, I remember most of the time it used to be generally music and dance oriented conversation most of the time. How much ever you try to avoid it will come there. But now with Ramya being here, she makes sure that the conversations are different, and we play some board games or dumb charas, do something different and just relax,
We talk about movies.
Yeah.
We talk about food. All of us are foodies.
Not me, so these three are very foodies.
So we talk about food, the dogs, her treks. She talks extensively about her treks and the various places we go. And so I think, these conversations go around that.
Right.
Yeah, but consciously, yes, we try to avoid.
It's something which is very refreshing, because when we are able to, the family leisure time is quite refreshing. Yes. Yes.
It's refreshing. Raka, tell me a little bit about your treks, right? When you're, sometimes they say when you go for a walk or you go for a run or you go for a trek, sometimes you can either like completely turn inward and so you're only with your thoughts, or you can completely go outward and you actually soak in the surroundings. I just want to ask you what happens to you, number one, and also a little bit about uh, you create work. Does that happen in moment of leisure, or does it happen in a moment of like intensity? So you can
Second one in leisure, definitely. I create work. I like that
kind
leisureliness
of
when
lay
I
back.
create work.
Yeah,
Yeah, lay back because I mean, you can really work in depth when you have that.
right.
I mean, certain things like simple things like, I mean, if you want to choreograph a particular tilana or a jati or something, that can be done without much. But if you want to create a production as such, you really need that leisureliness in you.
Right.
And talking about the first question, what you asked, yes, when I hike, it's different when you're in a group and when you're hiking alone. So most of the time, you always hike in a group, and most of them always keep chatting, which
Yeah.
I try to avoid. I allow them to move ahead. I walk back so that I need that calmness, peace, just to
Quite.
think myself, quietness. And even the nature is so beautiful around, it's so quiet. Either way, I mean, anywhere at home, you're always like, in the class or something, the conversation is always happening. So hardly you take time off and sit quietly, right? So at least these walks, like what I do, like alternate day hikes near my house. I always, rarely talk conversation happens. So me and my friend hike and we're just quiet by ourselves and we just enjoy the nature and same, it might be the same sunset every day we see, same tree we see, same path sometimes we may take. But there's a change as the seasons change. So only when your mind is so quiet, you're able to see these beautiful changes around. And sometimes some deeper thoughts also occur when mind is quiet. So many beautiful thoughts also occur as you keep walking, and suddenly you realize, when did you walk so far? I mean, I never realized it.
Yeah.
So a lot of beautiful things happen when your mind is quiet on hike, especially when you hike and especially in between the nature.
How
I
have these
love that.
things of beauty really influenced your art, Indraka? Like from what you've seen, has there been something that you've seen that has determined the way you move, the way you use your hands, your eyes? Has this sort of changed?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, the nature is so beautiful, magnificent, and humongous. I mean, it's so beautiful, and at the same time, it can be so like frightening also, right? So these emotions, I mean, that I have experienced during my hike definitely influences my thought process in my choreography and in my emotions, because I mean, without your knowledge, when you see something so beautiful, the tears just roll down. I mean, when you see those, when you're in Himalayas, when you see certain places, you don't know why you're crying, tears just roll down. And these are the precious moments, what happens, like even when you're creating, sort of, what it feels like to imagine that and how to emote that, I mean, it's something so beautiful. Yeah.
In fact, I'd like to add something. I
Please.
mean, generally, for me, when as she told, the Himalayas, when we go there, just sit in front of a mountain. I know I am totally soaking in the surroundings. I mean, the beauty of the surroundings, the nature, the magnificent, the peaks. Or when I'm on a seashore, when those waves are just, hitting you, the breeze is sort of all over you, and the saltiness, all those beautiful moments when I'm driving. I told you, these are the moments when all of a sudden, though we are enjoying the beauty around, suddenly I feel I'm going inside, and these are the most creative moments I've had. Actually, I'm able to really do so much when I'm in such surroundings, when I'm actually just there by myself in front of such beauty. That's where magic happens.
No, absolutely. And I think I'm also thinking about how, like you rightly said, when we surround ourselves with things of beauty and take time for ourselves, even with our thoughts, our response to things also changes. I think we respond to things also differently. And also, I finally want to ask you a little bit about, you've traveled across the world, and I know that you go on some lovely holidays. We've seen lots of photographs as well. Do you also believe that leisure is also great for mental health and mental well-being in a certain way? If you can just comment, because that would be so useful for artists who will listen to this conversation later.
Definitely. I mean, it is a luxury also, I think. I mean, we can say that, yes, you should go on a holiday, good holiday, take break from everything, but also it should be affordable, right? So maybe in that case, when they go for performances, they can take a break there and make sure to take time to see the places around, In that way also one can take holiday. It's like a working holiday, whatever you say.
Oh, absolutely. I think some of us do take our lives and our jobs a bit too seriously and forget to actually make time for downtime, right?
Not only for making time for holidays. Yes, definitely leisure is absolutely very important for mental health, especially for artists because we go through so many ups and downs. So many of them are stressed sometimes. So leisure actually helps you rejuvenate your senses and your emotions, and you're back to where you can actually start working normally. But not just travel, but just even sometimes family time. Just going with the family to small places, doing things together, or anything. Doing maybe even just playing some sport or just watching sports or reading a book. I think these are definitely breaks which artists need to take because just by holding the tambura and singing, that is not leisure because you need to take time away from that also and do some things differently.
Right. Have you ever done a class where, I know that you speak a lot to your students, you encourage them to read, you read a lot, you share your readings on Instagram. So I've been watching all that. But do you ever do a class where you just kind of not actually teach and just, talk to your students sometimes, just to kind of, just take it easy, um, once every now and then?
Yes, I do definitely because I think that's very important. It's an important part, an important. Uh, it's very important the process of a sharing between student and teacher. So there are many occasions I just allow them to be themselves, share their experiences because there is so much sometimes to learn from them. I even tell them that I learn from them. So sometimes we do a lot of things apart from just singing, just by sharing each other's experiences and understanding, and me sometimes talking about my experiences, and sometimes just talking randomly about movies or about things. Sometimes these are important conversations to have because the bonding between the Guru Shishya is very important and
Absolutely.
it goes beyond just the class hours. We need, even in the class, we need to bond, we need to be friends with them. So,
No,
For me,
absolutely.
it's a bit different. Um, Class time, usually I don't have this kind of conversations because students come from very, very far places and they really want to dance and do things. So, but we plan before, like, okay, today after the class, let's go for a hike. So after finishing the class or one day specifically, we just hike and I take them around and we have a lot of beautiful conversations there. And sometimes just the quietness, yeah, there. I mean, no need of any conversation. Just the hike will teach them a lot of things.
Right, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot for all of us to take away from this conversation, but over and above all, I must reiterate that the two conversations that I had one with Chitra Dasharathi last week, and the one I'm having with you today. Both have put me in a mood for leisure, and I think in many ways I've been selfish and I curated this emotion primarily because leisure is an emotion that I am extremely fascinated with, and I don't do enough of it. In fact, in the beginning of the the first post I put was when I interviewed an author who had written a book called The Pleasures of Leisure. I asked him, like, what exactly is leisure, and he almost told me something like, you're such a loser that you're not engaged with the idea of leisure. And I felt really terrible. So it's like an ideal that I am chasing. So I'm constantly drawing inspiration from people like you who talk about it and who are trying to consciously make time for it. Thank you so much, really, for sharing your story of leisure with us. I do know that a lot of people will watch it and will take home some key insights on leisure and downtime. Thank you again.
Thank you, Akila.
Thank you,
Thank you
Akila.
for
Thank you.
Having us over and sharing our experience. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.